do it.
All right. So today we got wonderful No Way Out review today.
Mm-hmm.
Anybody have any quick thoughts about No Way Out in general?
So what was your impression of the set on the whole, Nate?
It was an interesting set. I remember when this set first came out, it was just coming off of Royal Rumble, which was a holiday set. So it was smaller, but there was a lot packed into Royal Rumble. So this environment felt really kind of open and really fresh the first time we cracked into it. And then we started looking through the cards and what the fuck is this dynamic shit?
Well,
yeah, Dynamics,
it's not the release that introduced Dynamic.
Yeah.
It introduced Cheater and Fan Favorite.
That was Royal Rumble.
Royal Rumble introduced Cheater and Fan Favorite.
But No Way Out did introduce Dynamics. They
Yes.
weren't real popular, unfortunately, because
Really?
they just didn't necessarily do anything. The fact you could get another Dynamic was cute, but that was kind of covered by Technical already, since Technical fetched other Technicals whenever you played one.
Yeah, the difference was that Dynamic had to be played distinctly as an action to do that. So if you could get actions through at 0 Fortitude, then every Dynamic could be every other Dynamic. The problem was that Volley This came out a year ago.
Yeah, like we talked about in the last one with Volley This, the 0 Fortitude action market just dropped off. In fact, there was, at Gen Con that year, there was a dynamic card fight where a bunch of the New York, New Jersey guys just brought multiple handfuls of dynamic cards. And after all of the official tournaments were done, they were just throwing them at each other to the point where it was littered with dynamics. And we really felt bad for the guys who had to come in and sweep up all of it.
Yeah, I think the Dynamic really could have been something if it had been a keyword. But because Dynamic was just a word in the title and then a pile of text on the card, there was no room for things to do anything else. So you had a ton of vanilla moves that just could go get each other if you could push actions through.
And that was something they discussed in having some ideas of what Dynamics could do, similar to the volley mechanic. But much like some people cringed at the trying to remember all of the components of the volley mechanic, the dynamic mechanic was starting to fall into that same category. Not only could you search for one as an action, but you could also remove one to reduce the fortitude of, and after a while they just went, okay, stop. We're just going to put it on all the cards as an action. But Dynamics really didn't come into their own, even with the dynamic finisher. They really didn't do anything until Great American Bash, where they got all that support, the pre-match, the mid-match, and now suddenly they were a whole lot of fun.
Interesting.
That was,
I got misinformation here on that, so my apologies.
Worry about it.
Let's talk about some of the superstars that came out of this release here. Anybody want to start with someone?
Carlito was in this set, yeah?
Yep.
yeah, he was the promo superstar.
Yes.
Yep.
And Carlito had gotten one card from Heat Seekers, which was...
I know cool, and that's not cool.
Yep.
Yes, thank you. And even as a promo, just with that one card, because he's drawing 3 extra cards a turn, he was just blowing up because his hand got out of control so fast. But I think what made Carlito so big in this set was a little common card called In the Interest of Fairness Throwback. This card practically defined this environment because of how strong it is at just wrecking people's hands after the pre-match phase. So in case nobody's familiar with this card, I'm going to read it to you. After all players' pre-match phases, before the first turn of the game, all players reveal their hands. If you have fewer reversal cards in your hand than your opponent has in his hand, he shuffles 2 reversal cards from his hand into his arsenal, and you put 1 card from your hand on the bottom of your arsenal. So Carlito has a hand size of 1. So it is very easy for him to just play 3 of those, and you have more than 1 reversal in your hand, which is excessively likely considering how the game was shifting toward a reversal-heavy environment. Right, so you're going to lose 6 cards out of your hand. I'm going to bottom this 1 card that I had, and then when I get a turn, I'll just draw a bunch. And then I can just start hitting you.
And before I start hitting you, I'm going to hide the apple.
Yes.
Which I wish they had done this. They were actually toying with the idea of having different printings of the apple in different colors. Like there was like a 50% red and then 25% green and yellow, but they decided not to do that, which I'm kind of glad, because some people would have been chasing down all three versions.
Yeah.
Oh, yes, you would
And
have.
Same
yes,
here.
but I think Carlito might not have made as big an impact without Interest of Fairness, and that's something that came along later. You can tell that they started developing this set long before Royal Rumble was released. Like even before, while they were fleshing out Royal Rumble, they were still putting the ideas into this set. So Interest of Fairness used to be closer to the original. Like I think, which is something like
You look at your
pick
opponent's
one
hand,
card.
pick a card, they shuffle it back and draw two.
Yeah, and it was something closer to that. And then they said, okay, let's shake things up. And with Carlito having three of those, it really changed what he could do. Either a chain or a technical Carlito did really well. Also, because once you've raped your opponent's hand of reversals, and then anything they happen to draw, if they went first, you get rid of with the apple.
Right.
You can also pop the doesn't take a slot Carlito's Cabana and go get a move out of your deck. So you have that initial start. You've wrecked their hand, and now you're just going to keep rolling.
Right,
So
and your opponent was on the back foot for the whole game.
Sure. And I think Technical Clothesline also came out in this set, which is, I believe, I'm not checking, but I think that's the one where you could look at their hand and discard.
Just ream their hand by discarding technicals.
Yeah, and when you're drawing 3 extra cards a turn, that's cake. Technical was my personal flavor of Carlito that I liked.
I think technical was your personal flavor of deck that you liked, to be completely honest.
Technically speaking, I was all over that.
Yeah.
It just seemed like a complete package, because there were so many, and sidelining into what No Way Out brought as an environment. They started with the Royal Rumble, but it seemed like just a couple of ideas. But that technical maneuver that's successful always goes and gets another technical maneuver had a lot of potential. Plus, they all had some functionality built into them as an action. The only thing you had to watch out for was that they were hybrids, so suddenly they were bait for Hold the Phone, or another card I'm sure we'll bring up later, Shoot Counter.
Yeah, Shoot Counter is another one's huge.
That was a big game changer.
What about moving on to Jake the Snake?
So Jake was cool. That ability gets him very far. He's naturally focused on DDTs, which is a narrow move set, but that's not necessarily a bad thing, because that makes his deck kind of easy to build. All right, I'm going to take all these DDTs and put them in. Now what? But he has uses for those DDTs, even if he can't actually throw them, because a lot of those DDTs are very high fortitude. I think the only 0 fortitude DDT is Snap DDT.
And they made that specifically for him.
Yes.
There was another card that they cut. I'll get to that later. But when they cut some of the cards, they said, well, we've got room. Let's make one just for him. And that's where Snap DDT came from. Although when I reviewed the set, I was kicking myself that I never tried Snap DDT in Edge and Christian. When played, discard 2 cards. So no, you're going to draw 2 cards just for trying to throw the Snap DDT. I was like, why did I never try this?
What is his key card?
You know, honestly, Jake's
Superstar card
are all just kind of there. Yeah. I mean, Lucifer's cute, but the rest of his specifics, I mean, the best one was Mind Games throwback, and it was better for Tori Wilson.
Yeah.
That is something that we definitely saw in this set, was those, they were trying to increase the value by having people want to get more than one starter deck by having multi-logoed cards. They had seen some success with this in the past, so suddenly every deck had at least 2 of their
starter deck cards had other people's logos
yeah.
on them.
Sorry, I blanked on the word there.
And sometimes the logos were just weird, like Tori Wilson on Mind Games throwback, but it was because it searches for DDTs and Tori's finishers a DDT. It was a stretch, but it worked.
They had actually had logos on all 3 cards in a starter at one point, and Tori was supposed to get a cool DDT with Carlito, but they changed that to Carlito's way, and then decided now we'll just make 2 of the cards shared logos instead. But yeah, Jake's strongest card is definitely his superstar card.
Yeah.
How about $9 Man?
Oh, I love $1 Million Man.
He
$1 Million
was
Man was so much fun.
he was very techy when he first came out.
Yes.
It was backed by Virgil that really put him on the map in the next set. But he still had a lot of clever tricks he could do. Like you could play King Interferes, get rid of King Interferes to take 9 off your next card, and then play another King Interferes.
Or remove a Cow on Ice to play a Cow on Ice.
Sure.
He had to, and so for this particular release, did he have any key cards that made him good at all, or was it wait till
it was still more on his ability than anything else? I mean, the $1 Million title belt was also very cute. Go get a foil card, which made people chase after all the foils that came out in Survivor Series 3.
If they weren't already.
Yep. But that ability was just, it's money.
Ah, nice. We go to Booker Man.
Oh, yeah. Booker Man was great just straight out the box because he was forcing people to make tough choices. Okay, you can stop this fairly easy volley card, but are you willing to pay the cost? So at a time where people were looking to push moves through, it cannot be reversed, he just basically put a major cost on it instead, which is a great approach. And another way to use the Booker T cards in a way that was a little more aggressive rather than the more spongy approach that Booker T himself had.
And that made Booker Man fairly one-dimensional. He's going to be playing volley maneuvers, and he's probably going to be playing a lot of volley maneuvers. But that was okay because he was really good at it.
Indeed. And there's something to be said for the perception of flexibility. Like with Jake, you say, oh, well, he's all DDTs. You can't really build him another way. But that's not necessarily true. Like I saw at Origins where somebody was running a WWE Homecoming Jake where he would use his DDTs to clear the hand. Then he would go get the Homecoming move and push that through because, suddenly you're throwing multis every turn.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a pretty clever idea. But it's not necessarily about, well, this is only DDT or only volley, so that's all I can do. That's just what can pave the way or kick in the door to some other strategy. I think that's where the creativity comes in, whether you want to just do the intended path or whether you just want to use that as a gateway to go somewhere else in deck design.
And that rewards clever deck building and looking at the environment and saying, okay, what can I get away with? Which was one of the most fun things about Raw Deal is that you could get away with kind of a lot.
And to answer Tony's inevitable question, probably his strongest card was Managed by Charmel.
And 100%.
They absolutely wanted to find a way to make that on par with having Managed by Lita as the manager because, hello, it's volley. Why wouldn't I just go search for a volley to start and then draw one every time I play one? So they wanted to have something that really made people go, okay, this is worth packing as opposed to the obvious thing. So that you really have the Booker Charmel theme working.
Nice.
And
go ahead.
I think that Great American Bash really made Charmel kind of step forward because she could go get a Charmel card every turn. And in this release, that only gave you Charmel Sizzling Spouse, which had come out in the set before. But in Great American Bash, Booker got a superstar-specific Charmel card that also fetched uniques. So that really elevated Managed by Charmel even further.
Nice.
Also, you could fetch her. You could fetch her specifics like that.
Yes.
When you got towards the end, you could fetch that big reversal. I think
yes, you sure could. Charmel interferes.
We move on to largest athlete. What about that guy?
Oof, he was a beast. Ridiculous. That the ability to throw those big maneuvers without having to climb the fortitude ladder really gave him a different way to be played, which was quite intimidating. Another thing that made him more challenging was, and Big Show to an extent, but Big Show didn't quite have the same popularity, but largest athlete got that mine is bigger than yours pre-match. So at an age where people were looking at calling you out, old school wrestling match, US title, now he had another tool that he could shut down pre-match, control that, and then do what he wanted afterwards, because then you play the champ is here to get more slots and carry on. I used that myself. I built a deck that I call ECW Champion, amusingly, a few months later, he became ECW champion.
Yes, he sure did.
But the trick was to play the ECW title for the +2 and Chicago Street Fight. And so every turn you would go and get, unless they reversed you, you'd go and get everything but the kitchen sink. Yes.
Yeah.
And so you're just constantly throwing these big moves that are all reduced in fortitude. Technically, he can only play one a turn, but since kitchen sink makes them all come out at once, good luck stopping 3 moves you can't elbow.
Yeah.
Oh, you did? Good job. I'll see you next turn.
Good job. I'll see you.
He was also great as a volley deck because, like we talked about in the previous set, how it took a while for a volley to get traction on the lower end. He could just start throwing those cold cocks every turn and constantly replenishing his hand, plus all the stun he's drawing from volley moves.
One of my favorite cards to pack, and it didn't matter what deck I was building. Again, I'm not a big deck builder guy, but I just love the volley mechanic, and cold cock's one of my favorite cards to play. Loved it. And then the last starter deck we have from here was Extreme Diva.
This is a very interesting superstar, especially in this environment. We've talked about a lot of these people are just powering through moves. Extreme Diva is the direct opposite of that. She just wants to hang back and say, all right, you want to hit me? Make a hard choice.
Yeah. That's pretty much it with her, I guess.
Yeah. And Lita has some strong superstar specifics, and Extreme Diva gave her some more tools. I think It Just Feels Right was probably the best card out of this release for her. Oh, yeah. Because she could do some really silly things with that. It just feels right into quick count ref.
Yes. Boom, boom.
I'm just going to win the game.
Which was amusing, less satisfying if you're playing against it, but it was amusing as one of those matches where somebody distracts the ref and they get the roll up right after the bell. But thankfully I never lost to that. I probably would have been quite annoyed.
I would have laughed.
They did have a Lita Bomb, TMF, in there, and it would have also reversed submissions, which would have been a nice card for her, but they ended up cutting that for Just the Way I Planned. That's the one that lets you put a pre-match back in the ring.
Yeah.
So there was some neat tech they gave her besides the more straightforward approach. So it really counterpointed a lot of the other decks in the set.
And of course, putting pre-match back into the ring was intended to synergize with Extreme Hedonism.
No, Flaunt It.
Oh, right. Yes, thank you.
Hedonism had its own uses, though.
This release gave us a few extra booster superstars as well. We had Chavo, Funaki, the Mexicools, and Viscera in this release.
Oh, yeah. Chavo was a very...
Oh, no.
The Chavo was fun because in playtesting, this was, and Nate's talked about this before, when he had dropped the Chavo name and suddenly decided he was Kerwin White and he was going to be a white guy. He had renounced his Mexican heritage. So they were actually planning to make all of the cards white rather than red, blue, yellow, whatever. Would have been a unique look. And then, unfortunately, Eddie Guerrero passed away. And they went, okay, enough of this angle. We're going to honor him. We're going to be Chavo Guerrero. So they just converted everything that they had in mind, which had been Chavo cards previously. Chavo to Kerwin, nope, back to Chavo. And so they went to having those non-white cards. They were just regular colored, unfortunately. That would have been neat to see. But they had like number 1 white guy, Nick Nemeth, what became My Life for You. But it makes more sense because he was supposed to go get a foreign object, which makes sense. You know, the caddy's going to hand him a golf club to whack the guy with.
Sure.
And they had 3 amigos slated for Eddie. And at one point, there was actually a note in playtesting that said 3 amigos, and then a note said, doesn't matter, it won't get approved. They just knew once Eddie passed, WWE would be like, no, we're not going to make any cards for him. He's gone. Yeah. Not sure why. It would have seemed like a nice tribute, but that was their approach. Another accident that happened, nobody caught it in playtesting because there were so many non-unique. Yeah, there were so many non-unique premium rares floating around.
Yeah.
That nobody noticed that the Gory Bomb wasn't unique. They just assumed it was intended. So after the set went to print, somebody said, you know, hey, that's kind of cool. We get 3 trademark finishers. And Baron said, what? Oh, yeah, okay, because and I can testify to this more times than I can count. You get so focused on looking at what the card does and strategically analyzing how it's going to work that you miss that over here it says this instead of that, or doesn't have unique, or
that was my biggest job in virtual, is making sure that all those little bits got trimmed up and put back in place.
Yeah, you're right. Shorthand, like when you have 15 fortitude, everybody goes, okay, I know what that does. And nobody goes, that's not what you say when your fortitude rating is 15 or higher or some such. Yeah.
Right.
But Chavo
all know
himself
what
was...
you're talking about anyways. In play testing, it's just like you guys have all the same lingo, so you know what's going on.
Exactly.
Right. We have to translate from we know what this says to what it's actually supposed to say.
Let's make this more...
But back on the topic of Chavo, he worked as a pretty good little sponge deck because you could always toss that high risk that was too high or too low for where you were in the fortitude curve to get cards back and be constantly taking a lot of damage, especially with that reversal he had, 1 for 1.
1 for 1, yeah. Which was originally, here's one for the white folks in the audience or something like that.
Yeah, something like that.
Oh. That shit wouldn't fly today at all. I'm telling you.
No.
Right, it's like we're talking like the the Married with Children of cards right now that just wouldn't go today.
Oh yeah.
Then we have Funaki, huge hand size.
Huge hand size and nothing else.
Nothing else.
Funaki was an interesting exercise in deck building because when you sit down to build Funaki, you realize how many cards that you care about are hybrids, and you just can't have them. Losing Volley of this was the thing that hurt the most, and he never really got anything to make up that deficit because there was no non-hybrid 0 fortitude action reversal unless you were...
I found that using rules were meant to be broken was big for him, especially if you went heel, which was challenging because of the Funaki face pre-match card, but that would give you the way to gate it back in, so it was less likely to get blanked or whatever if you gated it in with a no-show. But that was later.
Yeah, there's not a whole lot of play with that guy. So I mean,
no,
just a large hand size and kind of hope for the best. Whatever your deck was constructed.
He's got a big hand, but he's missing a lot of key cards in his deck. Yeah, especially since he can't pack Sidewalk Slam throwback. So people are pounding through with irreversibles because they want to just push through your Sidewalk Slams and then beat your face in. And Funaki's like, I don't even have any of those.
We did give him the ace reversal on his one reversal card. I get the scoop or something like that.
Yes.
Because he didn't have Don't Try This at Home. And we gave, since he didn't have another reversal for aces, we gave him the coupon on his mid-match springboard body block. Yes. So that if somebody did use an ace on him, then he could just throw that next turn for nothing. 0-10, high risk, boom, there you go.
Yeah, surprisingly, he got some support in virtual that made him, a little better, no?
Yeah, we tried.
I think he's just underplayed. I think people just look at him and went, yeah, okay, Funaki. I had some success with him as a chain deck because I put 3 unbreakable chains out.
Mm-hmm.
And, with the big hand, you would have the fuel to, normally you can't sustain a 3 attack, but if you're drawing 12 cards right off the bat and underrating.
Yeah. Oh, God, I forgot about underrated.
Yep.
And then how about Mexicools?
They were tricky, but could be fun if you spent the time with them because they had so much flexibility between technicals and whatever else.
Mm-hmm.
I think we added them once because their ability allowed some openness there. I think like half of their ability allowed them some openness when we were doing our masquerade type of events.
Right.
Where you can just, you build your deck and then all of a sudden you drafted, Heat Seekers as your superstar. It's like, okay, I can work with this. I mean, my deck is kind of wide open. I can still use this. I just, you don't see a whole lot of Mexicool techie talk with them.
Right. I think one of the things that keeps Mexicools and Funaki from being played a lot is that those were really underneath guys. And people sit down and like, all right, I'm really excited to build Funaki, said no one ever.
No one ever, yeah. These are the top of the card, opening card right there. It's not even Mick Carters. I mean, this would be the modern.
Right. So if you want to have those underneath guys be really powerful, they have to bring something really, or not powerful. If you want them to be really represented, they need to bring something special to the table. And Funaki and Mexicools just don't.
But now, like Viscera, he's the last one of the booster guys like that. What about this guy?
Viscera is one of those guys that
Because he got some serious help in virtual.
he did, and he needed it because
I could probably use a little
all
more.
about those setups. Yeah,
He
he's all about those setups.
Yeah.
If you can land those setups and then throw a big move afterward, you're getting somewhere. But if that doesn't go off, you're just sitting there with a bunch of throw into the corner turnbuckles in your hand. Like, what do I do now?
They helped that some in Great American Bash too by giving him the size matters or something like that.
Yes.
The pre-match where he could bank a bunch of those and then be able to use them without having to worry about drawing into them or some crazy like back body drop tech to get them into your hand.
Right.
He had some potential, but I don't know that I ever actually built him. He was one of those that I meant to try and just could never quite see the inspiration into.
I remember playing against them a couple times. I think not during an ACMT or at all, but some of the monthly events I used to have back at the house or wherever at Frankenstein was. And I think one of the Four Ponies used to build them or something. I think.
Yeah, I remember giving Viscera a shot too.
They could be annoying if you get those setups going through. They could be pretty annoying like that. I remember that.
Amusingly, he was considered to be a starter at one point. I don't know that Viscera starters would have sold all that well.
No, that would have been a very strange universe where Viscera was put into a starter deck.
Yeah, they would have had like 500-pound Love Machine would have been the shared logo with Big Show. Okay.
Sure.
Flying Somersault Kick would have RVD. Okay, I can see that.
Yeah, that's reasonable.
And Take It Like a Man, which was originally called Dry Hump. They were going to give that to Heidenreich as well.
Good Lord.
I can't make this stuff up.
Well, we got less than 10 minutes now. So, any other like key cards from this release that are non-superstar specific that came out that you guys want to talk about?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah,
they really did a good job of building up on the cheater and fan favorite mechanic that they started in Royal Rumble, which was kind of cool, but because it was face and heel again, which I don't know if we've talked about this previously, but that was a WWE call. They said they wanted to get away from insider terms and they thought face and heel were too. So
it's techie talk.
Yeah,
right.
There's too smarky.
So they came up with fan favorite and cheater to be a little more palatable, but since they were brand new, rather than just replacing, face is now called fan favorite. They said, well, let's take this in a different direction. But if you're going to divide the set like that, they've already had face heel, they've already had Raw SmackDown. What's the value in having one versus the other? And they did a pretty good job of not just having reasons to play this or that, but also enhancing those with those reversals, like you can't cheat an honest man, where you could pick up a cheater or a fan favorite. So, okay, yes, by packing A, you can't have B, but here's a reason where packing A can be better than packing a generic card that might work in, it might be a chain or volley or whatever you're building around.
That's interesting. Yeah. And they also slapped that fan favorite and cheater on superstar specifics too.
They sure did.
But
and when Great American Bash came around, you started to see superstar specific the opposite alignment. So that it became literally impossible to pack all of your superstar specifics. It made you make a choice in deck building, which was cool.
Yep.
I can see that it would have annoyed some people because, oh man, I just got these brand new cards for Kurt Angle, but I already had these cards for Kurt Angle and they don't mix. What am I going to do?
And in some cases, it was like the Raw SmackDown scenario again, because certain, and Baron said this repeatedly, if they just took all the Raw and SmackDown logos off, the cards would be unbalanced, because you have someone like Jericho, all his cards were Raw based, but if he's drawing more with SmackDown that enables his discard engine more, then they would have had to make the cards differently with that in mind.
Or like RVD, where he's got Raw specifics, but SmackDown has all the money high risks.
Right, exactly. Yeah. So they did, one of the big things that came in this set also was the appearance of It's Great to Be Back Here in. Oddly, that swapped which is why you have a title, Just What the Game Needs, that reverses a couple of random types, including dynamics, which had just been introduced. Why does the game need a reversal to dynamics? Doesn't make any sense. But why does the game need a reversal to can only be reversed by? Now that makes sense. However, I guess, I don't remember being part of the conversation as to why. Mostly I was concerned with troubleshooting. Great to be back here and to make sure it worked right and didn't completely destroy someone like a Big Freaking Machine.
Mm-hmm.
Or later Mr. Pay-Per-View. That came later, but still. To make sure that it only hit restrictions from cards. But that suddenly gave us a new avenue to shut down Clutch and German Suplex and some of these other cards that were
Wheelbarrow Slam.
Yeah. Because they were still getting played against people not named Piper.
Yeah.
And this allowed them to have another avenue to stop those without going, oh, clutch leverage, here we go. Let me just start overturning cards.
Yeah. We mentioned it earlier, but Shoot Counter came out in this set. And Shoot Counter is really potent because it hits things that you wouldn't even think about it hitting. So Shoot Counter does 6 damage, 3 fortitude. Can be played when you have a card in your ring area with the word shoot in the title. Reverse any card that moves any number of cards from any ringside pile, any card that allows your opponent to draw any number of cards, or any non-unique hybrid card.
I cannot count the number of times that I sat there in a game and went, okay, I won't play this card because it's hybrid. I'll play this card. And they throw the shoot counter anyway. What?
Right, because it moves one card from your ringside pile. Or like, this says draw a card, shoot counter. And to go along with shoot counter, because you needed a card in your ring area with shoot in the title to play it, there were some more shoots in this set, but shoot action was the standout there. 6/6 action that can be reversed by step aside, escape move, and lift a boot.
Yep.
Ironically, not break the hold, because nobody plays break the hold. But I think this is also the set where Revolution of the Mind starts to find its footing in getting you reversals in your deck without going over 60. So shoot action is one of those things that might start pulling you back towards step, escape, break, because now you can use those to reverse this 6/6 action. That's multi, and it's probably going to give good fortitude if it hits. And it's also non-unique. So if you get hit with one, there's probably 2 more coming.
Probably.
I think it also gave a boost to certain divas that were action-based, like Tori, who could now go get a more potent action and didn't have to necessarily rely on some, action combo. She could just come right out and punch you with a 6 damage action.
Or some decks that didn't care to play maneuvers and just wanted to play actions. Like
that.
There's some pretty cool and strong non-superstar specific cards.
Oh, yeah. There's one more that I want to touch on. The coach says today's the day.
Yeah.
2 fortitude reversal that reverses mid-bench cards. It doesn't say non-unique. It's any mid-match card. Reverse card's removed from the game. If you overturn it while applying damage, you can remove it from the game and put a mid-match from your ringside pile back in your backlash deck. And once in your ring, your opponent's mid-match reversal cards are plus 10 fortitude.
I love that, using that with Ready to Fight.
I love that, period. I went to 2
Everything about this card is gold.
Yes.
Because just by it existing, your opponent has to think, okay, you have a nominal amount of fortitude. 2. That's all it takes, 2. And if I throw this mid-match card, you can kill it, remove it from the game, and then if I'm under 10 fortitude, you can start rolling me because I can't play my cow. Because my cow is 10 fortitude now. So that really deepened some of the cerebral aspects of the game in thinking about what you're going to throw and how much fortitude you need before you can start thinking about those mid-match cards.
I thought that card was vastly underrated because I was running 2 in every deck I could.
Yeah, for sure. I would still run 2 of that in every deck.
Fantastic cards like that.
So
guys, we got about 2 minutes left. Just like that. Is there any final thoughts on No Way Out? Like, I mean, as a release, how did it sit well with the players? Do you think?
I think it was well received. It definitely built up from what Royal Rumble did and expanded the concepts that were introduced, the technicals, the fan favorite cheater, and gave a lot more options to players. Plus adding in little bits like here's another chain card, here's another heat card. Probably the biggest thing it brought in that regard was punch after punch.
Yep.
That card just made cheater so strong, even if you weren't playing volley. Just throwing those down, beastly.
Yes.
Because at bare minimum, you're removing one card from the game for the punch after punch you just played. But if you have more, yeah, you can. That can be your end game right there.
At one point, wasn't that supposed to be a multi-3 card, punch after punch after punch?
That's another conversation that I'm thinking we can get into in part 2, because this set is as interesting for what they didn't do as for what they did, I think.
Yeah, I think we're going to have a lot of follow-ups with some of these, set breakdowns kind of. Evening, so,
but as far as this set as a whole, I remember really liking a lot of the things that were in it, and also getting really annoyed that it felt like a lot of games broke down to how do I deal with in the interest of fairness throwback.
Yep.
To the point where I ended up writing an article on comikimages.com on how to deal with in the interest of fairness throwback.
Well, this is definitely a fun release. These later releases are always kind of fun, so there's so much cool stuff like that. But we're kind of running out of time here, guys. So let's definitely try to touch up another time and do a part 2.
Sure thing.
I'm good if we want to roll right into a part 2, right? Take a quick break and
okay. Yeah, we can do that.
Either publish it separately or edit it together. Whatever.
It'll kick us all out, and then we'll start another one real quick.
All right. Sounds good.
Let's see here if it kicks us out here in a second or two.
It will. We're out of time.
We're out of time. Ready to go home. Buy a T-shirt. Yeah, this is fun. I like it.
Tune in next week or in a few seconds.
I'll just can it for later.
There we go.
Let's see. It says it's less than a minute. Let's see if it kicks us out. Should be any second.
All right, we're clean.
We are back with part 2 after our commercial break, actually. So where do we leave off Laugh with No Way Out here? We were talking about some of the non-superstar specific stuff that were key to this release.
Yeah, and they got some things in here that were pretty good. I think what also helped was a lot of the superstar support that came out as well. Some of it, there was some fluffy stuff like I Am a Wrestling God for JBL was kind of situational.
But he didn't need anything.
Yeah, he was doing great. But like Randy Orton's Ego Cutter was good because that gave him a way to try to sneak onto the board.
But that's a good question. Why would someone like JBL, who didn't need anything, who decides that he's going to get a support card? I mean, obviously probably WWE, but he didn't need anything.
It's kind of tradition. Plus, being able to put I Am a Wrestling God on a card, even if it's not an effective card.
Sure.
It wasn't totally bad. It only helped him if he was playing from behind, playing those commons, like maybe a heat deck where he's intentionally discarding his heat cards by playing some common heat so that he's filling up his heat access. Well, now suddenly you're boosting your damage a little bit by having a low hand, so it wasn't a total loss.
This is also the set where all of the superstar support was non-unique, right?
For it started, yeah.
We'd seen some of that in the past, like the Tajiri double chops from Armageddon.
Oh God,
but,
yeah. But this is a set where every single superstar support card for older superstars was non-unique because you got to get that value in.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
I think that ties into what Foley had told me about how when the sales were declining, so they were looking at ways to get people interested in buying more product. That word that people got tired of hearing Baron say, value, but it's really true. If there's more value in getting 2 of these than 1 of these, then people will pursue it. For the hardcore collectors like myself that want to have 1 of everything and enough to build multiple decks, that's great, but there's only so many of us. What they need is for the more casual fans to say, okay, I've got this, but you know what? I could use a second one because then I could play that card in both my decks at the same time.
In some cases, in certain releases, you can pack up to 6 of them.
Oh, yeah, those Hellfire boots.
Hellfire boots or the double chops. I know somebody who ran 14 of them. In fact,
that was only because he could only get 14.
In fact, funny story, at Origins, I think it was Evil Dave. He faced me with Tajiri deck. I went first with Heyman. I said, pump kick. It went through. He reversed it. Okay, his turn. He said, panic, whatever, and double chop.
Yeah, panic throw, double chop.
Panic throw, double chop. I said, okay. Panic throw is RMS. Here's refs and rules.
Yep.
That gives me 7 fortitude. Master Manipulator to your double chop I'll reverse it. I'll take them all out of your hand and your arsenal and throw them in your discard pile. And he just looked at me and went, those are my only zeros.
Scoop.
Scoop. So I said, okay, let's play that again. And this time I won't play Master Manipulator.
That's not fun. That's not fun at all.
It's fun for me.
Such a good card.
What else we
kind of
got
sad we didn't talk about it in Armageddon.
What else is it's key in the set? It seems there was a lot put in the set that kind of added a lot of value, like you said, value to the set.
Mm-hmm.
This set also built up a lot more on the precision cards that had been introduced in Royal Rumble. Precision as a mechanic was, these are expensive, but you can make them cheaper. And this had a lot more flavors.
That Royal Rumble was a small set. Royal Rumble. It seemed to introduce a lot of. It was a really good foundation. It sounded for a tiny set, less than 100 cards.
Yeah, Royal Rumble was the first holiday set that wasn't just a whole package. It wasn't just buy this tin and you have all the cards. It was a traditional booster set, but it didn't have any starter decks. It was booster only. But because it was so small, they really took that design space and went, okay, how can we maximize the impact of every card that's in this set?
And that may have been why. I think you just hit the nail on the head. There were no starter decks. When you look at every other set, there's all these cards, some of which feel really fluffy. Mm-hmm. Sure, there's some, by building these themes of dynamic, precision, heat, volley, you can add in a little bit and have something to build starter decks around. But a lot of times there's, rapid fire punches or backhand something or other. That's actually a rare. But
whirling backhand, yeah.
Yeah, that's it. There's these odd cards that seem like they came from a good idea, but just don't really say, I can't see why I would play this when I can play this, or this instead. That's more thematic and focuses more on what I'm trying to do. And because they didn't have starter decks to fill with those kind of fluffy cards, I think that's why Royal Rumble felt like such a focused set. But that might be more of a topic for another set. No Way Out. What we're getting at is that it really built that up, and they really pushed the value with it. So much so that's value is one of the cards.
Yes, sure is.
And actually, that's worth talking about too. If I can just continue to monopolize the conversation.
Yeah, knock yourself out.
They introduced a bunch of pre-match feuds that brought back older cards and gave you more reason to play them. So you had that's value. We get a bunch of those Rumble Pack special cards.
Yes.
The Bulldog Takedown, the Great Technical Knowledge, that were very situational. Well, let's give you a reason to play those. Why don't you just shove them all under here and you can just have one every turn? Or Homecoming. Remember those old multis? Well, here, just go get them wherever you want. Although not being able to play Backlash reversals was really a major cost, and I never really got into playing that card other than M&M because they couldn't pack mid-match cards anyway. And I think there was one other deck that I tried it with, but it was always a very risky play because you get so much offense and sacrifice so much potential defense with it. Major announcement I never really used, but There Is No Escape was huge.
Yes. There Is No Escape is one of those cards that you mostly just cheat with it because it gives all of your moves +2 stun and can't be reversed from Backlash deck. But the only non-unique maneuvers you can play are back to basics moves. Okay, well, I'm probably not going to play back to basics moves because they're all shit. That's why back to basics exists, to make them accessible. But I can just throw a bunch of unique maneuvers and no one can stop things with non-super specific hybrids, so I don't have to worry about pain reversals. You can't reverse me from your Backlash deck, so I can just keep pounding you with uniques. And if you reverse them with the arsenal, I get 2 stun. Plus whatever they naturally have. I'm not seeing a downside here.
That movement against hybrid reversal cards was something they were worried about. James Candyman.
Yeah.
Apparently I've been saying his last name wrong all these years. Who knew? But
Candyman.
When Candyman talked about Foley or Baron coming around and saying, you guys just play all these red wall decks. You guys play all these red wall decks. You just reverse everything. The hybrid reversal scene was especially bad. Furthered by Piper, who would get rid of all of your preventative text. It cannot be reversed, can only be reversed. He would just blank that out so he could just hit everything with a nerve hold, or worse, he could hit something like an Indian Deathlock or a Spine Buster throwback, and be damaging you every time. So they gave a way to say, okay, here's a trade-off, but now you don't have to worry about hybrid reversals. The other thing that came out, and this is part of what I want to get into when we start talking cutting room floor of No Way Out, but they actually thought about making a rule that said your arsenal cannot be more than 50% reversal cards. Same with your mid-match deck.
Wow.
And it was the 50% rule, right?
Really,
and hybrid reversals
really
absolutely count for this. There's none of that, like when you have a pre-match, mid-match, and they say you can pack it either or. No, your hybrid reversals count as reversals. And they ended up cutting that because it was just too limiting. So they said, okay, well, let's, instead of trying to enforce that with a game rule, let's make cards that encourage people to work around that. So they have the No Escape. They also introduced the Denville, New Jersey card, and they knocked out another feud, which was kind of like That's Value and Major Announcement in those. It was supposed to boost playing a bunch of old actions.
Okay.
And some of those that were reprinted in Survivor Series 3. And if you played one of those, you could pick up a non-hybrid move from ringside. Amusingly, it was called Mouth Writing Checks That Bodies Can't Cash, a title we later used in Virtual for different reasons.
Yes.
But they added in the Denville card and said, okay, well, let's give people a way to say, all right, you're going to load your deck full of reversal and try to stop everything I do, fine. I'm going to rip a bunch of that out and make you make some really hard choices. Especially because, A, it gave you some game intelligence on what they were doing. And secondarily, it also forced people to say, okay, what if I get hit with Denville? Well, okay, how many of these reversals are superstar specific? How many of them are volley cards? How many of them are
and the
setups?
thing that's non-obvious about Denville is that you remove as many cards as you want from your deck, and then your opponent looks, and if there's more than half reversals, you lose. That's not more than 30. It's more than half. So if I remove 10 cards from my deck is 50 cards now. So if there's 25 reversals in there, or more than 25, I lose. Considering how many reversals you could end up running, there could be points where you had to turn your deck down to 30 cards, 20 cards, 10 cards, just to be able to get under that 50% threshold.
I think you're thinking of Dallas.
Oh, you are right.
Yeah, Dallas.
Denville is all players search their arsenal,
yeah.
remove hybrids, and if they have more than 6 hybrids. And in playtesting, we had to keep refining this because I don't remember why they said if they don't have an enforcer card, but
probably just to hate on stuff, Shane.
Yeah, but they you couldn't count superstar specifics because we thought, well, that's not fair if they just happen to have a bunch of superstar, like Dudley's. They got Bubba Punch, Bubba Bomb. Like, why should I be affected by that? Okay, that's fair. What about Viscera and his setups? Look at all those throw into the corners and Irish whips. They're all hybrids. Okay, well, setups are fine. And then volley, a bunch of the back fist Opchakis. How are we supposed to get started? Okay, so they made those exceptions. But otherwise, you can only have 6 hybrid reversals, so that should cover your volley this. Oh, no, those are volley cards. That should cover your don't try this at home, your sidewalk slam, and give you 1 or 2 others to choose from.
Escape the rules, things like that.
Yeah. But you couldn't get carried away with just all spine busters and all that, or you might get hit by Denville.
Yeah.
Good stuff in here. Got a lot of cool key, and from a I'm telling you, from a VelaCards and a retail sites like that, there's a lot of money cards in this release. I mean, No Way Out, Unforgiven, Great American Bash all introduced some really high-end money cards in this.
Yeah, there's another card that I want to highlight here, and it's again a common because this set was just loaded with great commons. Over the Ropes. Over the Ropes made a great number of decks just run. So Over the Ropes is a 0 Fortitude setup action. You may remove 1 maneuver card in your ringside file with Fortitude greater than your Fortitude rating from the game. If you do, your next maneuver played this turn is -2 Fortitude for every card of yours removed from the game and can only be reversed by hybrid or unique reversal cards. So we were just talking about how hybrids were getting hated on in this set. Here's a card that wants you to play hybrid reversal cards, but it's just making things a lot harder to reverse out of the gate. So you get this to stick. remove a maneuver in your ring set pile from the game, and you can just jump start the game. And it doesn't say card of yours removed from the game with this effect. So if you can find ways to remove cards from the game in the pre-match phase, you can hit the ground running. Things like playing San Diego and discarding 3 New Orleans.
Or, which they introduced in this set, the Giving Them High Fives throwback.
Yeah.
Where you look at 5 cards, you take 2, and remove the rest from the game. So you're immediately fueling that RFG pile.
And Giving Them High Fives is non-unique, so you can just drop 3 of those if you want.
Sure. And now suddenly your first move is coming
minus
out big
20
and strong
fortitude,
now.
yeah.
What about cards like In the Crowd Roars and stuff like that? That was a pretty popular card too.
And the Crowd Roars is just a good meat and potatoes action. It's a multi that draws you 2 cards and makes the next thing multi. There was an earlier card called JR style action that was 0 fortitude and just makes your next card multi. And that was a cool idea, but it never really came together because, again, 0 fortitude action.
This one allows you to draw 2, so
right. It allows you to draw 2. It's multi itself, so it has better odds of sticking. And it was fan favorite, which was a nice way to give fan favorite another little push. But it's also 6 fortitude, so you have to work for it a little bit.
A little bit.
But once you have that fortitude, it's much harder to stuff with just throwing 2 volley this at it, because then you're moving 12 from your ring step out from the game. You're probably not going to be doing that when your opponent only has 6 fortitude.
Now, this brings me to something I was going to talk about from the cutting room floor.
Sure.
Originally, they had looked at a concept called colossal, and then they decided they didn't like using the term, so they were just going to call it multi-3 or multi-number. The idea being that if they ever wanted to do a multi-4, they could. We use this in virtual as, this card requires 3 reversals instead of 2. Which I think they adopted in occasional places. I can't think of one off the top of my head.
3 Amigos.
Thank you. I thought it was in print before we adopted it with virtual.
Mm-hmm.
But they had this on a lot of things. It was actually...
and Andre's channel.
I was going to say Andre.
Yeah. That's it. They had punch after punch after punch, which would have been a multi-3. The fortitude damage was not as drastic. That was like a 22-13.
Mm-hmm.
So you definitely had to work up to get to it, but then suddenly you're throwing this thing that they have to hit 3 times, or, if they were lucky and played face and had once is enough.
Or play Get the F Out.
Right. Going back to And the Crowd Roars, this would have made your next card multi-3. And the trade-off, the trade-off when they got rid of that was they gave it the ability to draw 2 cards instead.
Yeah.
There was a lot of things that they pushed up when they took the multi-3 away, like shoot action was originally a 6-3, but it was a multi-3, which would have been much harder to stop, like you were just saying, even if you've got a couple volley this and maybe a no chance in hell and you have the fortitude for it. That's still a lot of cards out of your ringside. So one of the things they looked at was they're talking on the one hand about multi-3. On the other hand, they're talking about the problem of too much red wall and how they want to maybe introduce this 50% rule. And somebody said, how can you say, let's introduce something that requires you to reverse it 3 times and say, please pack less reversals in your deck? So they kind of went, oh.
Right, these 2 goals are at odds.
Okay, and it's one of those things where you get to chasing an objective and don't necessarily step back to look at the big picture. And when somebody, I wish I could remember who thankfully said that, they kind of went, yeah, okay, you're right. So we saw a lot of the multi-3 stuff come out, and it was used very sparingly in specific circumstances like 3 Amigos. And instead, they gave those cards back something else to help them out. Tying into that was Lashley was one of the superstars they considered. There was a lot of superstar changes, but Lashley was one of them. And the plan for him originally was that all of his non-superstar specific cards were multi-3, but if you played one, you had to remove the top 3 cards of your deck from the game. That seems like a somewhat fair trade-off, but I think it would have played out better. Me personally, I think it would have played out better than the your non-uniques can't be reversed from Arsenal, because then at least multi-3, he's probably going to hit you. They just needed some sort of limiter to just keep him from just steamrolling you with, say, technicals where he's constantly getting a move. He would have also gotten multi-3 superstar specifics. So his finisher would have been, good luck stopping this with 3 reversals.
That would have made the elevator lift worth playing.
Yeah, just a little bit.
A little bit.
But they ended up cutting him, and he ended up coming out in Great American Bashes. But no, they had also considered Jimmy Snuka as a
Really?
6'3" legend. He was supposed to once per turn discard a chop or search for one chop. Just discard to pick up one chop from ringside, or you could search for one chop in your arsenal. And if you land a chop, then you could go fetch a high risk out of your deck.
Interesting.
So that's not terrible, but could have worked. The problem is I think that's not necessarily strong enough to sit with just your superstar card and the legend package with guys like Piper, guys like the Immortal One, who was strong ability and had good support cards. The other one they looked at was Tito Santana.
I remember the Flying Burrito was his super card.
And he would have been able to pick up one strike from his ringside every turn. That's it, just any one strike. Which, at first, I think that's not so great. But then I think, well, that's all of the hybrids you can also pick up.
And you're not paying anything to do it. You just grab a strike from your ringside every turn.
So you got a discard deck. You kill my hand. Okay, I'll get rid of this strike. Next turn, I'll pick it up. He's like a super Undertaker.
Yeah.
A little like Revolution Ric Flair in some respects.
Yeah.
Just pick it up at no cost.
Mm-hmm.
Ridiculous. Anything else you had on the cutting room floor there? That's some good stuff right there, man. I never knew about Tito or Jimmy Snuka.
Oh, I have quite a bit. Sorry, a little interruption there in the real world. It interfered. Let's see. Did we cover all the major stuff? Oh, no. I'll get back to that in a second here. But the other thing that we're looking at was a mechanic called ECW.
Oh, yes.
This would have been a brand. And this will start to sound familiar in a minute. But the idea being that, okay, we've got SmackDown, we've got Raw. They were already in talks to do the second One Night Stand pay-per-view. And this is where Rob wins the title from Cena and everything that followed. And they already knew they were going to kick off the ECW show. Of course, WWE knows about this. I think they were promoting it some, like hinting at it on the programming, but we kind of knew it was coming. The people who follow the insider dirt sheets or whatever. So they said, let's make an ECW brand to give an alternative to Raw and SmackDown. So the ECW moves would have had the mechanic that you can play one, and then if you successfully play an ECW move, you can go get a foreign object out of your deck. But there were limitations, and here's where it starts to sound familiar. You can't pack Raw or SmackDown. You can't pack face or heel or chain or heat or volley. Unless they're foreign objects, because it doesn't make sense to have a foreign object gimmick and you can't do it. So they ended up calling all of the ECW stuff out, but it became all of the bash mechanic in the next set. I have no information or no reasoning why they didn't go with that, but I think it really would have opened up the game in a whole new direction. Not just for foreign object superstars, but for the people who tied in well to ECW. But they had ECW punch was like a 0-6. So they had these moves that would increase the fortitude faster, but maybe didn't offer as much as some of the other cards. They didn't have a downside, like Double Underhook Backbreaker is a 0-7, but you got to lose 2 out of your hand. Running Lariat's a 0-6, but you run the risk of getting an irreversible thrown back at you. So this ECW mechanic would have given you like a more aggressive fortitude curve. Those, when they converted to Bash, those were already in existence, but when they came up with the idea of having Bash pre-match giving you fortitude, they instead made those multis instead of like a 0-6. That's where they got the 2-6 multi, the 3-7, the 4-8. Because, hey, we're giving you fortitude to start, so you should be able to play these right away. They had an ECW rules match, which would let you burn 3 to pick up a foreign object. And that's something we kind of incorporated into the Extreme Rules match in Virtual.
Yes.
The same concept that you could also burn if you didn't want to discard, which helps you get started at the cost of sacrificing some of your deck. The one that amused me was that Shane delivers the bash action, the 15-5, was originally just ECW, ECW, ECW. but it was a neat idea, and unfortunately, they did, for whatever reason, took this out of the set. And when they did, we saw a lot of cards come in to fill the void, like other little throwbacks or some of the other fan favorite cheater stuff. I don't know if that might have been part of why they cut ECW to make more room for the fan favorite cheater, but this was something in a very early design in playtest, and I think even in development before it got to playtesting. Looks like, oh, here we go. I made a note to myself. Some of the cut cards became, for example, the shoot throwbacks. The shoot punch and shoot. Yeah, I don't think they threw back shoot headlock, but
No, they did not.
Shoot punch and shoot slam got throwbacks.
Shoot punch definitely did.
Yeah.
I'm not sure that shoot slam did. No shoot slam throwback, just shoot punch.
When did Scoop Slam come out? That was in Royal Rumble, right?
That was Royal Rumble. Shoot aerial 360-degree kick got a throwback
That's
as a 0-7.
But that's where they made room for like the snap DDT.
Mm-hmm.
I think some more precision cards might have come out of that. They were able to fill the void rather well. So yeah, the ECW mechanic was something that could have been, but wasn't. And Bash turned out pretty well as an alternative. But I don't know. As an ECW fan, it would have been great to see as a brand rather than just an odd Bash name, which doesn't really have anything to do with wrestling as such, but whatever. Sure.
We got anything else, guys? We got about 5 minutes on this.
Sure. Let's see. Boogeyman, Visser, and Mexicals were considered as starter because, the big one, Latino Cheat.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, he was going to be one of the starters. That's why we had to have him in Virtual 1. We had to kind of reduce it because at the time the plan was everybody gets one card if they're just a promo superstar. So especially because pictures were kind of hard to come by. So we added in some of the Chavo cards, which were intended to be Eddie cards anyway. We gave him 3 Amigos. It didn't make much sense to kind of reverse engineer 3 Amigos into Eddie Guerrero because Eddie's more of a high risk deck anyway. I don't know. That's another conversation. But the Stealing Life, Cheating Death was supposed to be a starter foil that Phenom could also get. They had I'm Your Poppy. It was a 2-3 action with some plunge on it that Rey Mysterio could also play.
Oh,
that's cute.
About the only other thing to talk about here would be the promos. They had some really good ones. We had Let Me Get a Shot In, Blatant Chokehold, which helped define the fan favorite cheater era. Maneuver of Doom was amazing.
Yeah.
Maneuver of Doom almost seems kind of undercosted.
Oh, it's definitely undercosted. 8-12 is a really aggressive fortitude line. And sure, it's volley, 10?
Volley 10, multi.
Yeah. Yeah. So if you want to remove
chain.
20 cards in your ringside to kill that, feel free. Otherwise, they get to shovel back punch. Yeah.
Plus, it's heat, so for heat decks, they could throw it. Oh, you went through all that to reverse it? Great. See you next turn.
And it lets me recover, but I'm not losing my heat because it's a heat card.
We gained non-specific trademark finishers in Dynamic Finisher and The Finisher, which was originally supposed to be an ECW finisher, by the way.
Yeah.
It was supposed to port that brand, and then they just made it generic instead. And
I was really happy to see those 2 cards come out, Dynamic Finisher and The Finisher.
I think it was good for decks like
Trish, who her finisher is a early game card.
Yeah, or people who just had one or none because they just never got around to it.
Yeah.
Also in this era, it wasn't part of the set, but we saw the movie cards as tournament prizes, and those were just great. Besides the fun of those fake movie promos they were doing for WrestleMania being put into cards, they made some great uniques, which JBL just loved all of them. JBL goes to the movies. I saw that deck more times than I can count.
Yu-Gi-Oh! Men was really good in the limo. That's all I'm going to say.
Oh, yeah. Plus, the other good one for him was Kurt McChristie because it was recurable. So he could discard a card, pick it back up, play it, draw another card to replace what he just discarded, and go get another movie card.
Yeah.
Oddly enough, the lip lock didn't really go over well. That was the non-unique promo they had for that time. although there's a funny story with that. Originally, it was just a female-only card. And then they decided that, okay, males can pack it, but if a male plays it, he can only play it against a female. And there was a whole conversation about this in playtesting. And Candyman is actually the one I remember that said, "What's wrong with a dude kissing another dude?"
Yeah.
And Kevin Fish, of all people, which is
Billy and Chuck some love, man.
yeah, Kevin Fish of all people, and you might know who he is, Nate.
Yes, I do.
Said nothing's wrong with that. So we still going camping? Funnier because Brokeback Mountain was out at that time, but yeah. The good old days of playtest banter.
This is a pretty well-packed release. So there's a lot of stuff that came out. It's both just when it came out for customers to buy and price support.
Oh yeah.
Promos. I mean, it was just a lot of shit was thrown out in this one.
Yeah, they were working really hard to try and give people a ton of product and a ton of value in that package. We've said that word over and over, but
that's the proper word.
That was the focus.
There's a lot of value in this.
Mm-hmm.
Literally, that's value.
That's value. Best card in the whole set right now, I think. It sums it right up. Well, this was a fun release here because there's just, again, so much stuff in it like that. I'm sure there's probably more we could probably cover on this. But we are running out of time again.
For real this time.
For real.
Yeah.
So I'm going to have to try and splice these together, or at worst, make it a two-parter or something like that. So I'm starting to can a bunch of these now because I've got so many coming through that I'm just going to have to start kind of working them through. And again, my wife is probably getting tired of me leaving the room all the time and leaving her with the beast by herself. So I can hear them right now. They're running around out there like that. She poked her head like, So I appreciate you guys' time as always. And
anytime. I'm happy to be
I'll reach out to you guys again because your guys' schedules are a little bit busier than mine. So and find out if there's another release, what we want to do next.
Sounds good.
All right, guys. I appreciate it as always. We'll see you again soon. All right.
Until next time.
You got it, man. We out of here.